Welcome to what we're calling VJ Live, and I'm actually going to try and do this every day at 12:30, except for days that I'm not in town or I forget or there's a time difference and I mess up. But I think it's important to use the technology to bring together all the members of the VJ.com and all those prospective members. We'll be answering your questions here live. Brett, send a question. They can
just comment on the
comment on the page, and we'll answer your questions. Or you can email us if you have things we'd like to deal with in the future at contact@thevj.com. If you're used to watching the live streams on the VJ.com, you've probably noticed that we're in the studio, which is next door, which has a white background. But this morning we'll go from what I call the library set, or Lisa calls our living room. And the reason I'm here is because I want to make an important point about video and what we'd call video literacy. We've lived in a world of print for 500 years, and it's an incredibly rich world filled with a whole spectrum of things, and it impresses people, and it changes the way they think, and it changes the world. I just finished reading Ron Meacham's fantastic biography of Thomas Jefferson, and Jefferson and the Constitution and the entire country were actually based upon reading things like Montesquieu and Hobbes and Diderot and D'Alembert, Voltaire. The people who wrote the Constitution and founded this country in the American Revolution were remarkably well read, unlike some people in the government now, who I won't mention because we shouldn't get political. No, don't do that. But the point is that books have an enormous impact, and books do not come from publishing houses. I mean, they do at the end of the day, but books are written by individuals who simply have a passion to write and to tell a story. I have behind me on the shelf, and I won't bother you with it, 5 or 6 manuscripts that never got published, but at least I wrote them. And the reason I wrote them was not because I had a contract with NBC and NBC hired me to write them because they thought I'd be a great star and get good ratings, which obviously they don't, which is why I'm in my living room and not across the street. But the reason I wrote them is simply I felt like telling a story, and that's where literature and books come from. And Manhattan is filled with people who are writers who never will publish a day in their lives, but that doesn't stop them from writing, and that's why the world of print and writing is such an incredibly rich world. The world of television does not work in that way. The world of television works that you go get a job with NBC or CBS or PBS or somebody like that. You pitch a show to somebody like the Travel Channel or HGTV, and you beg them and you cajole them and you try to convince them this thing will get great ratings, and maybe they put up the money and maybe it happens. And that's, for the most part, well, most of what you see on television, particularly in the realm of news and information and nonfiction, is absolute, positive garbage. That's because it is not a product of authorship by an individual, it's a product of a committee. And even if you sell an idea to a network show, then you go to a production company, and the production company really doesn't care about your thing. They know how to make television, they know what rates, there's a formula. And so what we get is a very watered down version of an original vision, if the original vision sticks at all, and generally it doesn't. That's why television is such garbage. And it wouldn't make any difference if television were just about entertainment. But television really is about what informs us and how we understand the world. And even though you may say, well, the internet, well, a great deal of what's on the internet, certainly in terms of discussion and content, is driven by what's on television. For better or for worse, CNN, MSNBC, NBC, CNN, they still set the agenda that the rest of us talk about and discuss. And what do they decide the agenda will be? It's based entirely upon ratings, and what drives their production is not a personal passion or a vision or a desire to educate. What drives their entire decision about what to produce and how to produce is based upon ratings. I have a piece in Huffington Post today, which I urge you to read, which is called The Donald Trump Show, which essentially says that everything he does is based on ratings because his life experience was really formulated by 10 years of producing television shows. This is dangerous to me. And one of the reasons that we started the VJ and that we run it is that we want to democratize the process of television. That is, open up the barriers of who gets to put stuff on the air, because the stuff that gets on the air becomes the center, the nexus of public discourse. And it's very important that this have a very, very wide berth, and lots of voices get heard. Not just the voices of the people who work for NBC or CBS or ABC, but all of our voices. Now, to go back to the library here, which I love to read, I try to get through one book a week. This week I'm reading the history of the Daily Mail, the British newspaper, which is absolutely fascinating, but I won't get get into that today. But just reaching over on my bookshelf here, this is 1776 by David McCullough. It's backward because that's how Apple makes their stuff. But in fact, unless you're reading Hebrew, we go left to right, not right to left. So no matter what I do with it, it's still backward. David McCullough is one of my favorite authors, and you've probably read some of his books, The Brooklyn Bridge, The Panama Canal. He's a fantastic historian, and he writes in a way that anyone can understand. And obviously, the man has a great passion for what he writes. When he goes out to write a book, he doesn't work for Random House. He doesn't work for, who publishes this? Simon & Schuster. I mean, they're his publisher, but he's not an employee of Simon & Schuster. People who work for CNN are employees of CNN, and therefore they have to toe the line for what CNN or Fox or anybody else wants. The thing that makes print and books so powerful is not that the idea flows from the publishing house down and the people who write it are employees of the publishing house. The idea is that we all are print literate. When we went to school, we all learned how to read and write. That was the first thing we learned to do. Reading, writing, and arithmetic, except for Brett, who went to Dalton and didn't learn the math part so good, but it doesn't matter, he still did well. The other parts he did great. Money down the drain. The point is that reading and writing are the foundation of our Western civilization. And it's not that we have one great TV star or movie star or host of a show who knows how to write. The fact is that everyone knows how to write, and everyone puts their ideas into this great nexus of public discourse. And some things have an effect, and some things have not an effect, but everyone has an opportunity to try. When it comes to the television business, up until now, or the media business, or whatever it is, you don't just get yourself a camera and start to broadcast, which kind of is what I'm doing here. This is very revolutionary in a way. The way you participate in the discourse, public discourse driven by television, which is an incredibly powerful medium, is you go get yourself a job at MSNBC or CNN or someplace like that, work your way up through the hierarchy, always answer to management, do what they want to do, and then if you're fortunate enough, you get your little sliver of time to essentially do what the network or the corporation or the media company wants you to do. This is crazy and destructive. So what is the answer here? Well, there are two answers. One is you can turn off the TV and forget about what they say, which is a dumb thing to do. Nobody is going to do that because we're all addicted. We all watch 5 hours a day. The other thing is you can change the content that television or video news is constructed of. And the way to do that is to embrace the technology and take control of it and write your own material. Create your own material. You don't need NBC. You don't need production companies. You don't need HGTV. You don't need CNN. You can do this yourself. And the reason you can do this yourself is because the technology is now here that allows you to do that. When David McCullough has an idea for a book, he sits down at his typewriter or word processor, whatever he uses, and he just starts to write it. And that's where books and literature come from. They come from here through a pencil and a piece of paper or a typewriter or a word processor to the rest of the world. Now we have to take television and video to the place that books and literature have been for 500 years. And the way to do that is to simply pick up an iPhone, which is all you need, and create and craft and publish, which the internet is fantastic for publishing and distributing for free. But one of the most important things here, and here we'll put in the plug for the VJ.com, is literacy. You have to know how to do this. When you went to school, no one taught you how to make films and how to make compelling video, so that's what we're here to do for you instead. There's a lot more to telling stories and holding people's attention for video than simply pushing the button and pointing the camera at something. And sometime next week, Brett and I are going to go out into Times Square and grab some schmagiggies who are pointing the camera and waving it around and teach them how to actually shoot compelling, comprehensive video in about 3 minutes. Are we going to do it live? We're going to do it live right here on the VJ.com, so we'll actually tip you off when we're going to do that. I don't know, maybe we'll get robbed, somebody will steal our iPhones, I'm not really sure. You never, or maybe the police will shoot us and arrest us, I don't really know about that. Then we could be on New York 1. So anyway, you get the idea. That's the message. Brett, are there any questions that have come in?
No questions
have come in.
But,
so
if you have questions, you can comment, and,
yes.
and we'll answer them in text.
Yes. Brett, well, Brett, here, why don't you tell everybody what you can do? Here we are.
Hey, everyone. This is the producer seat. If you have any questions, you can still just type them in here, and Michael will take the time and type a question and answer to you. All right, cool. See ya.
That's it? Okay.
Yeah, that does it.
Great. So
I can answer. Pat is asking about how to unmirror an iPhone. If you use the back-facing
Oh, wait,
camera-
here, all right, hold on. Pat,
Switch
Pat
the camera.
Kiernan from New York 1. Wait, we're going to switch. Okay, there we are.
So you'll see
You're
the
very backlit. But
Brown
okay.
says it reads correctly
Okay.
because we're using the rear-facing camera. When we use the front-facing camera, that's when it gets all mirrored and words are backwards. But if you use the back-facing camera, it'll read correctly, Pat.
And there we are. Now we've flipped it around. Of course, that's why we don't go the other way, because it's all backlit. And Pat, as you probably know, New York 1 was one of my first stations, VJ stations, so I love the channel, despite what Time Warner seems to be doing with it. But we can't say that, because we love everybody. But anyway, there we are. Thanks for tuning in live. We'll be here at 12:30 again tomorrow, and God knows what we'll talk about then. So that's it. Thank you, and goodbye.